Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Stellar and today we'll be talking about tables. Now, tables are used to store multiple values inside a single value, which is the table. In this video, we'll be talking about arrays specifically. So there's two types of tables, well actually more, but let's keep it to two. So there's two types of tables. So there's arrays and there's dictionaries. In this video, we'll be talking about arrays, and in the next series, we'll be talking about dictionaries. And the difference, you'll see it soon, but for now, let's just keep it to arrays. So the way you make a table is very simple. So the first thing you need is a variable. So let's say a local t for table, equals curly brackets, okay? So this is your table, and as it seems, it's empty. And we can start putting stuff into it. So let's say our first item is true. So this is our first item in the table. We can have more by doing comma. And then we put another value, and let's do 23, and we can have what else? 3. We can have workspace. We can have a string. Hello. Whoop. Okay, so this is our table, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things in it. All right, so we made a table. So what do we do with it? So the first thing we can do is we can read from the table, and the way we do that is very simple. All you do is t square brackets. All right, so use curly brackets for making a table and square brackets for reading of a table. And now if we say 1, this is going to refer to true. If we say 2, it's going to refer to 23, 3 to 3, and 4 to workspace, and 5 to hello. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And we can also have here nil, and as you may know, nil means nothing. It doesn't have a value. It's just nothing. All right. So when we say 6, it's gonna say nil. But when we say 7, it's gonna be nil too, because this is the 7th slot. Okay. So this is the 7th position in the table, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's supposed to be the 7th. But we didn't make that. So this is gonna be nil too. Okay. So 6 and 7 is nil. So you can print this, so you can do print t, let's say 1. We can also print the others. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do 7, 2, just to show you. Alright, so let's see what happens when we run this. Alright, so there's a couple of things in the output. There's true, 23, 3, workspace, hello, and nil. Okay, so that's basically what we just did here. So the first thing, true, second thing, 23, third thing, 3, workspace, you know, so on. So that's how you read from a table. And you can also set things in a table. So you can basically just say t1 equals false. Now, if you try printing t1 here, this is obviously gonna be true because we didn't change it here yet. It's just gonna stay true. But when we do it here, as you might know, it's gonna be false because, oh, sorry, this is supposed to be 1. It's gonna be false because we just changed it, right? So this is gonna be false. Let's test that. As you can see, it printed true and false. Okay, very good. So that's how you set things in a table. But we can also add things to a table. Let's say you wanna have another value like, no, maybe here, or 7th slot. You can just simply do 7, 8. But you can also do table dot insert t, and you can put a value here. So let's do vector 3.new 072. Okay, so table is a data type. Okay, so it's like vector 3. You have vector 3.new. You know, you have all these little functions built in, and table is one of them too. So you have like table dot create, concatenate, find, unpack, sort. Sort is pretty cool. So yeah, there's a function in the table called insert, and the first thing you have to give here, the first argument should be the table. So we made a variable called t, and that's the table. So we're gonna say t. And the second one is gonna be the value you want to insert into the table. So now when we try printing a table, if you just print T, it's gonna print everything. It's gonna give us the table here, and you can open it by clicking this arrow here, and as you can see, true, 23 workspace, hello, and this position here. Okay, so yeah, we can do a lot of these. So we can have, you know, random numbers. Okay, so that's just gonna put it at the end of the table. So that's pretty useful. As you can see, it's gonna set it to the corresponding number. So yeah, that's pretty cool. We can read from a table, we can put stuff in a table, we can set things in a table. That's really cool. All right, so okay, so you might think, okay, but how is this useful? Okay, well, this table, of course, is very useless. I don't know why you want this, but let's just remove that. So let's have an empty table, and let's actually call this parts, okay? So let's make some parts in the workspace. So in the previous video, we've talked about, you know, functions, how to make them more shorter, like do not repeat yourself. So you don't have to copy and paste the same code over and over again. We can do the same thing with tables. So let's call these parts difference, so we can take each of them without any trouble. So let's do parts is workspace.part1, workspace.part2, workspace.part3, and workspace.part4. Okay. Now we can have a little loop here that goes through every of these items, okay? And it looks like the for loop, but it isn't exactly the same. So you have for, and then you need two variables. So let me call them variable 1, variable 2, and then you need to have in, and then you put ipairs, and then you put in table in here, and then you type do, end. Okay, so this is a lot, I know, but let me just make it simple. So here you have two variables. Variable 2 is in this table, and variable 2 is basically the value. So if this is 1, this is part 1. If this is 2, it's going to be part 2, 3, 4, okay? So we can call this iteration, or I for short, and we can call this part, okay? So now we have two variables, I and part. And when we try printing I and part, it's gonna give us 1, part 1, 2, part 2, 3, part 4. Let me just run it. Okay, so as you can see, they're printing these values separately, line by line. So okay, that's pretty cool. We can now change their brick colors to, let's say, brick color red, okay? Now every brick color has been changed to red. And that's really cool, because previously you would just have to do, you know, this, and that's pretty annoying, okay? And we can also make a function here, like the previous video. We can do a change properties, and we could say, we take the part, and we do part.brick color is brick color.random. We can say part.assembly linear velocity equals vector3.new 100 and 0. And we can put a weight in here if you want. So let's do 1. And okay, let's just replace this with the function. So let's say change properties of part. Okay, so a lot of happened just now, I know. So what we're doing here, we made a function here. It's not gonna do anything, like I said in previous video, until you run it, okay? So then we're having here a for loop, and we're looping through the parts here we have, and we're taking the iteration, and we're taking the part that is in it. And then for each part, we're changing the properties with this function, and then we're waiting. So I hope that makes sense. I'd say just practice with it and see what happens. So the first thing, whoop, this one went last, which is weird, but it worked. And if it works, that's good. Okay, so this is how you loop through a table, okay? And this is basically the same, this for loop is basically the same as saying for I equals, let's say 1 to hashtag parts, And I haven't explained this, but hashtag, when you're doing hashtag and then a table, it's gonna give you the amount of things that are in that table. So in this case, that's 4. So this is gonna be 4. And we need the increment, do, end. So now we made a for loop. And if you want the part, you just do local part equals parts I, okay? So this might look a little advanced. Yes, it is. So this is just gonna loop, as you know. If you print I, it's gonna give you 1, 2, 3, 4 every time you loop it, okay? And you can take that number and you can put it here, and that's gonna give you, you know, the corresponding value with this number. So if you try doing change properties part and weight, not one. Let's see what happens. Whoop, whoop. That's pretty cool. So yeah, as you can see, that's basically the same. And as you can see, it's printing 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is basically the same as this, but this one makes it a little more simple. So yeah, I recommend using this. And one more thing, when you have nil here and you have workspace.baseplate, let's say, with ipairs, it's not gonna give you this because there's nil. It's gonna go through each part until it meets nil. Okay, so just make sure things are nil. You know, just let me prove it. So the baseplate should change color according to our script, but it didn't, so that's wrong. But when we remove the nil, see what happens. And as you can see, it flew all up. That's pretty cool. That's because, you know, this one is anchored and, you know, it doesn't slow down the velocity, so it's gonna keep pushing parts forever. And that's pretty cool, to be honest. It's like a conveyor belt, but, you know, it's going up. So yeah, if you want to prevent giving it nil, if you want to prevent the ipairs from skipping, you know, the last or, you know, whatever, you can use pairs instead. And when we try printing I and part, that's gonna work, but it's gonna skip nil. Okay, so as you can see, it skipped 5 because that one is nil. Okay, so that's basically tables. Okay, so you have a table you can make with curly brackets, and you can have values in them, and you separate them with a comma. And you can read from tables by doing parts, and then, you know, the number, the position in the table, and you can write into them doing, you know, with an equal sign, and you can loop through them, and you do that with for index or iteration, comma, value in pairs. Then you give it the table, do, and do whatever you want with the items that are in the table. So yeah, I hope that cleared tables. It's part of the do not repeat yourself rule, because we could have done this like a lot longer. We could have like taken 20 lines for this. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but just imagine you have a lot of properties to change. This one is pretty useful. Okay, one more thing I forgot, more about this thing. You have like a lot of functions here, and if you want to read about it, you know, developer.roblox.com, it explains everything here. It doesn't do a great job at it, but you can always look it on Google. We used insert here. We didn't use anything else. We can use like remove to remove a certain value. So let's say we do T1. I mean, not T, I mean parts. That's gonna remove the first value here, and then this is gonna be the first value. So yeah, just play around with it. It's pretty fun to play around with, to be honest. You also have, you know, find, and if you give it like workspace.part2. It's gonna give you the position workspace.part2 is in this table. That's all pretty useful, to be honest. So yeah, just play around with that. And that brings this video to an end. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you learned something new. And in the next one, we'll be talking about events and methods. And that's basically, you know, let's say you want to detect whether this part is touched. We can do that by doing workspace.port1.touched connect function, you know, that kind of stuff. I'll explain that in the next video. So, alright, so thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.